Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Unclench Your Jaw. I'm Nimu, strength and conditioning coach, somatic yin yoga therapist, mother of one, friend to many, secretly the most loved relative, and still very much the loved sister or favorite sister, even. Now, I'm also the owner of more tattoos than is sensible decisions. A woman who regularly reminds people to unclench their jaw while forgetting to unclench their own. Anyway, welcome to Unclench Your Jaw with Nemo. This is a podcast for your nervous system, a place where we get curious about attachment, relationships, parenting, healing, trauma, resilience, and all the wonderfully messy things that make us human. So, even before we begin, I'd like you to notice your shoulders, notice your breath. Don't change anything about your breath. Notice your jaw. And if it's clenched, you're in exactly the right place. Take a slow breath in and a slower breath out. And unclench your jaw. Now, today's conversation is called The Good Child, or perhaps more accurately, who did you have to become to be loved? Now, before anyone panics, this isn't an episode where we're blaming our parents. I know some of you have already tightened your jaws again. Unclench, unclench, unclench. This isn't about blame. Most parents are doing their best that they could and can with what they have. Notice I'm talking about the parents we had plus us as parents, right? And any future parents that we have. But hopefully, the future parents will do a much better job than us because of podcasts like this, isn't it? Now, no, this episode is about curiosity. It's about understanding the roles we learned to play because I don't think any child wakes up and just decides, you know what, for the next 40 years, I'm just going to be a people pleaser. Nobody chooses that. Nobody chooses perfectionism. Neither do they choose emotional hypervigilance. Nobody chooses to become the family therapist at 9 years old. Those things happen for a reason. And so today, we're going to explore some of these reasons. I want to start with a question. A question I actually wish a lot more adults would ask themselves. Who did you have to become to be loved? Not who are you, not who do you want to be, but who did you have to become? Because many of us grew up learning that certain versions of ourselves were welcome and certain versions were not. Some children learn that achievement and love. Some learn that helping a lot around the house or just helping and love. Some learn that disappearing and love, being the quiet one who's never heard, that earned them love. Some learn that taking care of everyone else earned love, and before long, those adaptations became identities. We stopped playing the role and became the role. Let's imagine a room. Inside the room, there are four kids. At first glance, they seem completely different, but they're all asking exactly the same question. The first child is called Maria. Maria is the golden child. Every report card, exam, they matter. Every achievement matters. And relatives visit. Hey, yeah, I think Nairobi has messed me up. When relatives visit, Maria's grades are discussed. When teachers call, her performance is discussed. When people talk about Maria's future, they talk about her potential. Everybody's proud of Maria. And so, what Maria learns, and not consciously or deliberately, what her nervous system learns is the more impressive I am, the safer I feel. Nobody asks, Maria, how are you? They ask, how did you do? And slowly she begins to confuse achievement with worth. Years later, Maria becomes incredibly successful, But every failure feels catastrophic. Every mistake feels dangerous. Every setback feels very personal. Because deep down inside, she's still trying to answer the same question: am I worthy if I'm not exceptional? Now, I want you to pause. I want you to notice your jaw and clench it. Take a breath and let's continue. Now, second child. Second child is called Amina. Amina is a caretaker. She notices everything: who's upset, who is struggling, who needs help, who needs comforting. She learns how to make herself useful. She becomes the helper, the fixer, the responsible one. And adults love Amina. What a good child. What a mature child. Nobody actually notices that Amina stopped bringing her own problems to people years ago because she learned something important. Other people's needs matter more than mine. And so, as an adult, she becomes a person everyone calls: the friend, the colleague. Everyone calls the friend, the colleague, the sister, the partner. Everybody knows Amina will show up. The problem is, nobody knows when Amina is struggling. Not even Amina, because she spent so much time caring for everyone else that she forgot how to take care of herself. Now, let's meet the third child in our room. His name is Otieno. Otieno is what I like to call the invisible child. Now, unlike Maria, nobody is talking about Otieno's grades. Unlike Amina, nobody is praising him for being helpful. Otieno has learned a different lesson. The adults around him were busy, they were overwhelmed, they were stressed, they were carrying their own burdens. So Otieno learned to not add to them. He learned to keep things to himself. When he was sad, he dealt with it alone. When he was scared, he dealt with it alone. When he was struggling, he did what? He dealt with it alone. People described him as independent, mature, low maintenance, easy. But here's the thing, right? Children are not supposed to be low maintenance. Children are supposed to need things. That is the nature of being a child: needing things: affection, love, attention, toys, everything. They need everything. They're supposed to ask questions, to seek comfort, to depend on adults around them. Otieno wasn't independent. He was adapting, and there's a difference. As an adult, people admire his self sufficiency, but relationships confuse him. Receiving care feels uncomfortable, and asking for help, it feels impossible. Trust feels risky because somewhere deep down inside, Otieno learned, if I need less, I hurt less. Again, let's pause. Let's notice our shoulders. Notice your jaw. Take a breath. Exhale slowly. And remember, you don't have to carry this episode the way you've learned to carry everything else. Now let's meet Kamau. Kamau is a strong child. And before we continue, can I just say something? The strong child often gets the best PR, the best public. Yeah, it's because I'm speaking about Kamau. Gets the best public relations. Everybody loves the strong child. The strong child gets called resilient, brave, tough, independent. Nobody ever asks whether they wanted that job. They've just been given the job. Now, Kamau has grown up hearing things like be a man, don't cry, toughen up, stop being sensitive. So he learned how to lock things away. Sadness was locked away. Fear, disappointment was locked away. He learned to lock away need and even vulnerability. He buried them. And not because they disappeared, but because they were not welcome. And so he became strong. At least on the outside, Kamau is strong. But nobody, sorry, the body keeps score. We've heard of the book, an amazing book actually. The body keeps score, and so eventually, the things he started burying start showing up somewhere else. Maybe as anger, maybe as anxiety, maybe as exhaustion, maybe as a nervous system that never truly relaxes because strength isn't the absence of emotion. It's simply the capacity to stay connected to ourselves while feeling it. And Kamau was never taught that. He was taught survival, not connection. Now, if you're listening and recognizing yourself in one of these children, you're not alone. In fact, I suspect many of us have a little bit of all four: the achiever, the caretaker, the invisible one, the strong one. And this is because childhood isn't just where our story begins, it's where our nervous system learns or starts learning who it needs to become in order to belong. And this brings us to attachment, my favorite subject. If any of my friends out there listening, you know attachment is a story. My eyes light up when we start talking about attachment. Now, attachment is simply the bond between a child and their caregiver. But that bond teaches us so much more than whether we are loved. It teaches us who it teaches us who we think we need to be. So if affection comes when we're successful, we may learn to perform. If affection comes when we're useful, we may learn to caretake. If emotions are unwelcome, we may learn to hide them. If vulnerability is punished, we may learn to become strong. Children are extraordinary observers. Long before they understand words, they understand patterns. And their nervous systems are constantly asking one question: what do I need to do to stay connected? Belonging is not a luxury, belonging is survival. Thousands of years ago, being separated from a group could mean death. Our nervous systems still carry echoes of that reality, which means a child will often sacrifice authenticity to maintain connection. I'll say that again. A child will often sacrifice authenticity to maintain connection. They'll become who they need to become, not because they're manipulative. And I've heard you people out there calling children manipulative. Children are very rarely manipulative. And it's not because they're weak, but it's because they're trying to survive. The tragedy here is that many of us grow up and forget we're wearing a costume. The role, that role becomes identity. The achiever thinks their achievement. The caretaker thinks their responsibility. The invisible child thinks their independence. The strong one thinks they are resilience. And then one day, out of the blue, as happens, someone like Nimu comes and asks you, who are you? And they don't know what the answer is, or they don't know how to answer that. And this is because we've spent so many years answering a different question. The question is, who do you need me to be? Let's take a nervous system pause here. Unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders. Take a breath in, and then exhale slowly. Notice where your body is touching the chair or the bed. Notice your feet. Notice that right now, in this moment, there is nothing you need to achieve, nothing you need to fix, nothing you need to prove. Just listen. One of the most healing questions I've ever encountered are, or some of the most healing questions I've ever encountered are questions like, who am I beneath the adaptation? Who am I beneath the role? Who am I when I'm not performing? Who am I when I'm not helping? Who am I when I'm not achieving? Who am I when I'm not being strong? Because the role isn't you. The role helped you survive, but it isn't the whole story. Now, I want you to imagine the room again. You remember the room with the four kids: Maria, Mina, Otieno, and Kamau. The achiever, the caretaker, the invisible child, and the strong child. At first, like we said, they look completely different. But remember, if you listen carefully, you'll discover they're all asking the same question. Maria asks, will you still love me if I fail? Amina asks, will you still love me if I stop taking care of everyone? Otieno asks, will you still love me if I need something? Kamau asks, will you still love me if I cry? Different children, same question. And I think many adults are still carrying that question today. Will I still be stopped if I stop? Will I still be loved if I stop performing? Will I still belong if I stop pretending? Will I still matter if I simply become myself? Now, as we come to the end of today's episode, I do want to leave you with a reflection. Think about the child you once were, not the child people thought you were, not the child people needed you to be, but the actual child. What did that child need? What did that child that you were long for, what did they never receive? And what would it be like to offer some of that to yourself now? And this is because healing isn't becoming someone new. Healing is often remembering who you were before you learned who you needed to be. Take a breath and clench your jaw, and remember, the mic may be quiet, but the work continues. And so until next time, take good care of yourself. And yeah, we'll see you next week. I'm back. I'm back from my 2-week break, so we'll see you next week. And we shall continue maybe with a strong child, maybe with the achiever, we'll see. But we shall see you next week. Asanteni and goodbye.